Hello, Si Leslie here at Cheers TV. Special guest Mark Dingwall from Follow. How are you doing, Mark?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
Now I know you've been busy
enjoying
today.
the debacle at the Celtic AGM today.
Aye, I had a wee watch. It was quite funny, and obviously Rangers brought out their details as well. But I think they maybe delayed that a wee bit with the fun and games. So today it was the Rangers Football Club limited accounts for 2025, and I know you went to the Rangers press conference after that, didn't you?
Yes, aye.
All right, okay. So just quickly going to go through this. So before we start, would I be right in saying that Rangers didn't have to, the board didn't have to publish the accounts?
They have to publish accounts, but they can print them in what's known as an abbreviated form. So that would maybe be about 8 pages, and it wouldn't really give you a huge insight. What they've decided to do is to continue to keep them published in roughly the same manner as they've always been. And so when shareholders get the accounts, they'll be about 50 pages long as normal. Right. I noted that they said they're still going to have an annual meeting, but that's likely to be in the summer rather than the normal December time.
So it was interesting that they released that today and some of the information they put out. So James Taylor, Chief Financial Officer, and the first quote I've got here was that the new equity investment completed in May has strengthened our financial base. As we continue to progress on our financial plans, we'll be able to continue to invest responsibility in the team and facilities and on our long-term future. So it's quite interesting that he's came out and said that. What's your thoughts on that?
I think last year and probably this year will be financially kind of like marking time. The numbers are up a bit, in most areas about 4% for things. They're down in a couple of areas. So it's more or less the same as what happened the year before, because obviously we aren't benefiting from selling players. We aren't really getting the benefit of Champions League football. Europa League football's not bad, but it's not great. But it is what has made us a slight profit in, one out the last 10 or 12 years. So that, those areas are vital. But I think as well, as you'll see, and this might be a problem this year, is that the growth, or shall we say the thirst for Rangers fans to get into the games is really the bedrock of everything. This year it's 48% of our income comes from tickets. Physically people going through the turnstiles and hospitality to actually see the game. So that's by far the biggest income stream. Now this year, as we know, people have been very annoyed by the performance of the club and directors and players and managers, and that has been seen in the attendance at the European games and other kind of walk-up parts of the stadium. Yeah. So if that continues, that could be
a problem.
I'm not going to say a real problem, because obviously a huge amount of that is season ticket money, but it'll be significant enough for the club to keep an eye on it. And then obviously when you get to February, March time, you're not getting huge numbers of from income. It's the end of the season. It's getting towards the end of the season. That's the time when clubs normally look for some loans, or go into a bit of debt to tide them over until the season tickets come in. So if you look at the underlying strength of the club, there's a thing called EBITDA, and what it does is it strips out bits of debt and whatever, and that traditionally gives you a better view of how the club is doing. It's like the underlying health of the club. So this year that would give about a 5.6 million profit, whereas last financial year, it was a 0.2 million loss. And they've done that by cutting some costs, cutting, wages, which is, I think it's now something like 61%. Oh, for every pound that comes into the club, 61 pence was going out in wages. Compared with other football clubs, that's not bad, but obviously, it's not good if you're spending money in transfers and wages and not making the money and selling the players going out. Now, obviously, this summer we sold Morelos, we sold Jeffrey, we sold Dessers, we sold Ridvan, and that should help the accounts look quite a bit better next year. The numbers that are reported in the press sometimes don't actually marry up with the numbers.
The reality.
But I'm thinking you've probably got the guts of about 20 million there that'll look good in the accounts next year. For the year that these are for, we had 58 games. The previous year we had 61 games. But obviously, the money that was coming in, there was more European League games. So that tends to be a bit better than, playing more Scottish Cup or League Cup games. So the underlying strength of the club remains, well, I think the finances now are based on two things, which is, as I said, the season ticket and ticket money.
Yeah.
And secondly, the fact that our former directors and shareholders and the 49ers obviously see that there's enough strength in the business. They've got a belief that prepared to back the club. And that's looking to be to the tune of about 20 million against this year. So I don't think that's a sustainable model for more than 3 or 4 years. I mean, we're now talking, we've had over 10 years of that. I remember Dave King many years ago saying that he reckoned it would take 50 million to get us back where we wanted to be. And it's taken over 100 million, and we still aren't where we wanted to be. We're not back to the good old days. So it's not the healthiest of results, but I think it's roughly where we all expected them to be. And it does give us some hope that with the players that we've bought, and I know there's a lot of eyebrows been raised about the purchases this summer, but I'm thinking that the money that we've got from the sales this summer will be in, this year's accounts as of, was it 30th of June they normally finish off. So that'll make quite a difference to the club. If we can progress in the Europa League, which is looking pretty difficult after the opening results, that would be a great help, particularly if you got a couple of attractive fixtures. If you remember, Simon, way back when we played Bayer Leverkusen on the Thursday night, and then the Friday they declared the COVID clampdown.
That's right.
That night we took in over £2 million in revenue.
Badly needed after that happened.
And it's that's the type of difference that getting a good draw in the playoffs and even the Europa can make to you, So it's difficult to get there, but that's the type of thing, that's the type of event that can make a difference between making a slight profit and making a slight loss. We're at a stage as a club where, to keep us operating in the manner to which we become used, under David Murray's 20 years, it worked out roughly about 5 million a year was what the subsidy to the club was from shareholders. In fact, in David Murray's first 10 years, it was a lot better than that. I think the club made the biggest loss it made in, the 9 in a row years, if you want to call them that, was about £980,000. But to buy and give wages to the type of players that we've been used to, it's not a cheap business. You're talking average squad players are maybe in about £1 million a year.
So a couple of questions on the graph that's above us here. 7%, £6.3 million is broadcasting rights. I thought we'd have got a lot more than that. And then there's 8%, and it's 7.4 million on the commercial partnerships and sponsorships. I would imagine this is only the Americans are only in about 6 or 7 months. I would imagine long term they'll be looking to increase both.
I think the problem that we and our pals across the city have got with the broadcast money is that domestically we don't bring in a lot of money as a country in Scotland, and then once you get to Europa, you get a slice of a cake, but the slice of the cake is also determined by the slice of your TV audience. So if you're an English team, an Italian team, a Spanish team, you don't have a problem. If you're a Scottish team, the size of your cake and the slice of that cake is obviously smaller. But I think what UEFA have been doing over the last 4 or 5 years, they've tried to undermine any breakaway. And one of the ways that they've done that is to throw money into the Europa League and also to a lesser extent to the Conference League, so that the kind of what you would call mid-sized clubs don't rebel. You know, you're getting so much money thrown at you, you just think, well, we're getting this. Why would we take a leap in the dark to back a breakaway? So I don't think that'll change a huge amount. I think it will go up, you know, maybe somewhere between 4 and 10% a year for the next foreseeable future, you know. In terms of the commercial partnerships and sponsorships, there obviously are ways that, you know, that can be improved. Now, one of the ways that people have, there's already people saying, oh, the Yankees haven't brought in any sponsorship. Well, sponsorships tend to run from season to season. And again, if you're going to a commercial company, you've got to be able to say, well, you know, for your pound or your dollar, you're going to appear in so many newspaper pages, you're going to appear on TV so often, you're going to appear on TV so often to X million people.
Yeah.
But I think there are ways we can probably boost that, as you know, from experience you and I have had over the years, dealing with that commercial department. I mean, at one point it was actually privatised to a guy's company rather than actually being a part of the club. So there's no continuity. Years ago, there were good people in there whom they had a corporate memory, and that went from year to year, and they were decent to deal with. And if you had a decent idea, they would take it on board and
that's right,
whatever. Whereas in recent years, it's people who you get the feeling when they come in, they're never going to be here for more than a season or two. You know, they're just passing them through. So if you look, for instance, at the late lamented James Bisgrove, his way to boost it was to say, I reckon that this club is strong enough to sustain about 30 smaller partnerships. So you had, you know, partnerships where, you know, somebody was an official soap supplier, you know, supplying this, supplying that. But the cumulative effect of that was to grow the pool of money that was coming into the club, rather than just saying, well, there's the ship sponsor, you know, and, you know, end of story, that's the club sponsor. You split it into quite a few divisions so that people can become official suppliers and official sponsors in various ways. Has that kind of run its path? As we saw with the cryptocurrency sponsor, you know, sometimes you get winners, sometimes you get losers. The beautiful thing about that was we got actually paid for that up front before they went into liquidation. And again, the problem is we're operating in a Scottish market. So I reckon there are ways, if they can attack it in a meaningful way, in a strategic way, that they can get more bangs for the bucks.
Yeah. I mean, the retail and commercial activities, that's just the one thing that everyone expects it the Americans will be good at, with that American market, and obviously increasing that 12% up to a higher percentage
Well, I think you and I are old enough to remember that used to really be the jewel in Rangers' crown. The commercial department 20 years ago was maybe making £5-6 million profit a year, no matter what happened. And that was good money back then. And then once you got, Murray hiving off to JGB, and he made that out to be a good deal. But then you get Castor, for instance, taking over the operation. And as you and I both know, they're really only interested in strips. All this good stuff that used to get the Ranger daft stuff like Rangers wallpaper, but I mean you had a complete range of Rangers branded merchandise in there. For those of us who were down at Liverpool to see the size of their mega store and the different merchandise that they offer in addition to the strips, it was like travelling back in time. I mean, we used to all be proud of the fact that Rangers were at the cutting edge of commercial exploitation.
Seems a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and slowly that was, as I say, I mean, I think Murray sold off the family silver. You had could go through a few names, but like, for instance, Jill Rothwell, the Everton supporting lassie, who came to Rangers and made a big difference. And then Nick Peel's obviously, he was the man that had the bottle to say during the print run, the 5 stars thing is so popular, I'm going to give everybody 5 stars. And even if you'd bought a strip before they started officially putting them on, you could swap your shirt or you could bring it in and get the 5 stars put on. And that was a club making a big decision to respond to what the fans really wanted, because yourself, the idea of the 5 stars really caught hold online, and it got to that stage where it couldn't be ignored. People were clamouring for it, and the club did it. I mean, they could easily have said next year, but they had the bottle in those days to say, no, fans want it enough, so we'll go for it now, So hopefully with the Americans, as you know, they're I was going to say they're very commercially orientated. It's more than that in America. The whole culture in America is to serve the customer. And you've got people involved with us now who have been involved with the 49ers. And if you look at the way that they do things in America to service their customers, I'm sure there's more than a few of these guys have got ideas on how to do that, how practical they'll be in the UK. But I'm sure that they will have ideas that will pay off for us in the future.
Yeah, interesting. With those figures that we looked at on the screen and we've discussed earlier, does it take into account playing at Hampden for, was it 3 months we were at Hampden?
If you dig into the figures and using my contacts, the cost of going to Hampden was about £2 million.
That's not too bad.
That involves loss of revenue because a lot of people didn't fancy going to Hampden. They were pissed off, they didn't want to spend money.
Yeah.
They don't like Hampden, as we know. A lot of people really don't like the slope at Hampden and the sightlines. It also involves the extra money because of the extra time that's spent working at Ibrox. And the way that they've handled that in the accounts, it comes out, it basically cost us about £2 million. The fuck up, if you'll excuse my French, on a family orientated show like your own, Simon, that screw up cost the club about £2 million. So, you know what? I reckon I thought it was going to be a lot worse. So you hope that people learn from things, but in football, very often they don't learn, But that was when we start talking about expansion of the ground in future. That's been a pretty nasty learning curve that it cost us at least £2 million. I think there's probably some of the stuff that with added interest charges and buying stuff that's probably disappeared into the main accounts, but what can be ascribed to Hampden's about £2 million.
Aye, interesting. And regards to Danny Rose, obviously in at the club now, the start of the season it wasn't the best with Russell Martin. Do you think the club are going to focus more on the player trading model now the Americans are well involved?
I think they will. Obviously we don't have a huge insight into the, what could you call it, the Cambridge Analytics side of the business, where people crunch numbers and try to find gems at a reasonable price and whatever. But I think the focus is certainly on that. And also, it might be unwelcome because of the, Kevin Thelwell, Brian Chermiti appointing his son to a senior role. The focus from the fans is going to be right on that. As you and I have said in private conversation, it's very unhealthy for a club. Whether you agree they've got a point or not, but when you've got your chief executive and your sporting director's faces appearing on banners, that's telling you that there's a huge groundswell amongst the support that aren't happy with you, and they're watching every move that you're making. So he's really got to generate money, and good money. And he doesn't, I don't think he's got too long to do it in. When Danny Rowe was appointed, there were a couple of nights meetings with fan groups and whatever, as well as the official launch of the of Danny Rowe, being the head coach.
Appointed, yeah.
And I think it maybe took about 10 hours between the different press conferences. And Kavanagh, the chairman, was there. And in public, he's quite, I actually quite like him. I think he's quite a smooth, considered kind of guy. But he did the right thing in that he backed his men, and he backed them strongly in public. And he backed them strongly in private as well. But I don't think he would be at all happy that he's come from the States and he's had to spend a couple of days firefighting to back these guys. In America, as you know, it's very much, you get the job, you do what you're told, and if you don't, the boss tells the new guy how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that the two of them will probably have had the rockets to end all rockets inserted in their backsides and said, what am I coming here to have to answer for you, for the job that you should be doing. Years gone by, people didn't know who the names of directors were. They had no idea who the chief executive was.
They didn't
probably knew that. They only knew who the club secretary was because his name was in every ticket.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, you guys are becoming a real problem with banners and chants and protests. So I reckon they've got if they don't get their act together, they've got a fairly short lifetime.
So all in all, what was yourself and the other people that have been at the press conference? What's the overall feeling on today's announcements for the books?
There wasn't a huge amount of discussion, as you can imagine. The two press conferences today were with Conor Barron, which lasted about 5 minutes, and that was mostly on. I don't think he actually played in the Danish game, but he was there. He was with the squad. It was mostly about Conor Barron and seen behind the scenes with the Scotland team, whatever. With Danny Rowe, I'm just going to check here for you while I'm chatting away to you.
Just while you're doing that, Mark, I think that Danny Rowe's a lot better. He looks a lot more comfortable at the press conferences than Russell Martin does.
Obviously, obviously he's got better English than we've got German. But he's quite comfortable. His press conference was 18 minutes and 40 seconds, which is long. That's long. I mean, even Clement, who liked to chat, was like 13 minutes. That was more or less bang on every week. So he chatted today. I don't propose to go through all the info that he gave out today, but there are quite a few injuries in training and with people being away in the squad, so that could be a problem for team selection and tactics and the next coming. Most of them seem to be muscular issues, which, as you know, can, who knows how long a muscular injury is going to take to heal. You're in the lap of the gods there, So I think we roll, and I did ask him this. I said, you've had a wee bit of time in the international break to have a reset on what you've seen them and the guys, and you gave them a blank sheet of paper. They've played, they've trained under your direction. You've had a wee bit of a break with internationals to see, will this suit us going forward? Will there have to be more changes? And I did bring up the issue of Europe. So, he answered if there were numerous media outlets were there. So, you can check that out in your very, your outlet of choice, and you can get the full 18 minutes if you want to come to follow.com.
Or you can watch it on you'll have it on your Patreon page.
Yes, it's up there just now, yeah, but it doesn't cost you anything to watch it. It's on the links on the what do you call it, on the forum, so you can have a look there. When people, obviously, both players and managers tend to be quite guarded in these things, but when you're talking for that amount of time, it's actually fairly difficult to lie to people. So I think most of the stuff he's given you is pretty truthful, and you can make of that what you may. I mean, I think we've got a wee bit of a mountain to climb in Europe, but it's not completely impossible, But I think that's, if the way we've been since Gerrard arrived, the number of games and the quality of games, fans are really expecting that now. So it's not just an added bonus as it maybe used to be 20 years ago. So I think he's more than aware of that. Obviously, he's also got his set piece coach appointed, and if you're talking, I can't remember the figures, but set pieces are about 30% of goals, and forever and a day, a lot of goals come out of nowhere through mistakes. So he's got plenty to work on, both in defence and also when we're on the attack, especially from set pieces. So I think you may see, he kind of mentioned that today, that I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but it was almost as though Rangers can expect to get, it's just part of the game that you get set pieces. Whereas I think his attitude is, no, every set piece should really end in a goal. If you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I'm expecting him to. Well, what have we got out of set pieces in the last 5-10 years? We've expected Tav to score, haven't we?
Aye.
So there's maybe more than Tav. I'll be brought into that in the future.
Aye, I mean, I think the set piece coach will actually do a good job. I wasn't really keen on an appointment at first, but he does seem to have a good track record, and his input was something like 30 goals for Lincoln City last year with the set pieces. So if he can get even half of that at Ibrox to the end of the season, we'd be delighted.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that if you look into Rowe's CV, obviously people focus on being at Sheffield, but if you look at where he's been involved in Bayern Munich and the German national team, you're talking somebody really at the top of his game to be involved there.
Yeah.
So he's no mug. He's obviously got his own theories. When he was talking about the coaching team, he said, what I like to do is to try and blend people. He said, you've got the old heads, and then you've got younger guys who are full of ideas and want to maybe try something different and, maybe shake things up a bit, So that's the way he's going forward. At the end of the day, it's his team, so he lives or dies by it. But you can see that he's open to ideas, And as I say, being involved in Bayern and the German national team, he'll have seen all the different aids, all the different statistics, the TV stuff, the analysis. He'll be demanding that from the people around him. That I want the, no offence to you, but if you aren't up to speed, you won't be here long. I reckon that will be very much his attitude,
something badly needed. So that takes me up to the 30-minute mark. Thank you very much for your insight into the 2 press conferences, and here's to a victory tomorrow.
Here's hoping. Our old pal David Martindale again.
Yep, true. But we've got to start winning. We've been doing well in the last couple of weeks, and I'm quite confident. Okay, mate. Cheers. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Cheers.